Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live on Thursday here with Jason, Angelette, and myself. This is our Faith in Marriage Today Facebook Live, whatever we're calling this thing. But we're joined today with a very special guest, Cory Howat, who is the director of the Archdiocesan Catholic Community Foundation. Did I say that right, Cory? Is that right?
That's exactly right.
That's it, the Catholic Community Foundation. The rebranding you did. Anyways. So we're going to talk money because Cory's an expert at it, and he knows how to have these conversations well with encouragement. And so right now, obviously, we're in a state of quarantine. We're still in this, and we're trying the best that we can at Faith in Marriage to be able to help you to be able to navigate all the various aspects of your life in the midst of this quarantine. And we've just talked about faith and family relationships, but now we want to talk about what to do with that stimulus check that we all just got. And I think that's a very important conversation for us to have because what we do with our money is part of what we do with our faith, so to speak. Like our faith is what guides what we do with our finances as well. And so we want to be able to have an honest conversation about that. Now, Cory, when we were chatting before we went on air, you said that yesterday on Twitter something was trending, something to the sense of like hashtag wish they wouldn't have given me this money. What was going on Twitter yesterday? What was that all about?
Yeah, Mario, I think the fascinating part of this whole conversation is that there's a whole lot of money being dumped out there that when if you would ask somebody, here's $1,200, what do you do with it? Unfortunately, there's been a lot of mistakes, if you will, that have been coming out with the money, and some of that is just more reflective of how we probably treated money before all this started. And so the Twitter feed was full with ridiculous spends and overused ways to be able to just waste money, if you will.
Right.
In some ways, it brought a lot of levity to it, right? You're just kind of laughing at them, and then in the very same breath, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is a little painful because there's something here that there's many people that probably aren't handling this probably how they should be or how God has informed us to. So,
true words said in jest.
Yeah, exactly, right.
You got it, man. Yeah. And so, as a counsel, obviously right now, people, I'm attentive to the fact that a lot of people have a lot of anxiety in this moment. And often one of the things that we turn to when we're feeling anxious or we're looking for comfort is spending. And retail therapy is a joke. If I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it. I'm a Parks and Rec fan, and treat yourself, as Aziz Ansari says. And that we want to use this money as a way of feeling good about it. Now, in some ways, you also can convince yourself that spending this money is my patriotic duty. The money was given to me to be able to stimulate the economy. And how am I going to stimulate the economy? By buying those Nikes at 25% off, or buying those Cole Haans at 50% off, or whatever else that's on sale right now. But our encouragement is to say, like, hold the brakes. Now's not the time to just go ahead and start blowing all that money out on things that you don't need. Now, if you're going to spend that money on your bills, on groceries, on rent, on the things that are a necessity, then yeah, absolutely. But not just going and blowing or using that as a big down payment on a new car right now is not the way to go. What do you think, Cory?
I mean, there's more expense.
Jason, go ahead, Jason. Take it.
Well, there's just more expenses going on right now, right? Like we're at home more and we're eating more food, that we're going through our groceries faster than we would at this time of the year, right? Because the kids are home, they're not at school. We've got the electric bill. I don't know if you noticed that, but I noticed my electric bill went up. It was definitely more than it was last year at this time, and it was more than last month at this time. So there's just a lot of things that are more expenses. And so the question is that, do we sit on it? Do you try to stimulate the economy by buying that new TV that you kind of, don't really need, but you think that would be really great to have? Or is something else? And I think the bigger question is that, again, I remember being in a presentation one time where Davis Brister, he was giving this presentation. He kind of asked the question, think of everything that you own. And it was we were sitting there thinking about all the things, and you just the question brought to mind that, like, everything that we have is not really ours to begin with anyway. It's all God's. And so we sit here and we think about, this is mine, and I'll give this to God. It's like, well, actually, God, it's all God. God gave you all these wonderful blessings. What are you doing with everything? Not just with the 10% that you should give to the church you should help out with organizations, but what are you doing with everything that you have?
Yeah, no, and to that point, Jason, I think that's not only a great point, but it really allows you, when you start addressing the question you just posed, is it allows you to be able to understand the plight of so many different people and where this 1,200 meets you. You know, $1,200. Good luck with multiple kids and seeing how far it actually takes you. Right? It doesn't even get you past most of the time a regular mortgage or rent. And so in saying that, you're then saying, okay, well, for some, why are we even talking about spending this money? What, are you kidding me? It's already been spent.
It's already gone.
Right. It's absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
And so the other piece of that is being able to understand that where this meets everybody is could be in a very difficult spot, but also, you know, we understand that inside of the very act, this CARES Act that the government put together to distribute this money to individuals, they also started thinking about other things, about generosity. Because what they did was they also put in a bill in here that allows you to be able to give $300 to a nonprofit, wow. Your parish, or your favorite charity or whatever that is, to be able to say, hey, guess what? This is going to be an above line deduction that also comes back to you. So there's also some pieces there that the government also knew going in there. There's going to be multiple ways to address this, but generosity is one of those ways too.
So you're speaking about like then needing to reclaim. I think what we've all talked about off camera was like this lost art of simplicity, and in reassessing again what our values are when it comes to money, and that's a larger conversation. Jason, you said so beautifully. I mean, is my money viewed as something that's mine, that's separate from the totality of gift that God has given to me? Or is it that I view money as part of the larger question of stewardship that I know, Cory, you speak about often as well? And so how do we reclaim then this lost art of the simplicity? And we get this money. I mean, we all have big families, so we got more than $1,200, obviously. Like, how do we take this as an opportunity to have these conversations about generosity, about tithing, about saving, about putting money aside for the rainy day fund, about not just looking at it as something that we want to go out and go ahead and spend? What do you think, Jason?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, the question begs a larger issue that we maybe be struggling with before all this happened. And how do we view all these things? Are we living in fear and worry that we need to hoard everything, or we're living reckless and careless and we just go with paycheck to paycheck? And sometimes that's not necessarily because we're careless or whatever, it's just because we're just strapped. We have so many expenses. I think about the freedom that people find through like the Dave Ramsey program, where there's this new way of seeing things. And I think that's what I mean. I'm definitely not perfect here by any stretch of the imagination, where I need to do a better job with my generosity and my budgeting and my expenses and being able to spend what's reasonable for me with the income that I have, not going above and beyond my means. So this taps into a bigger question, I think, for all of us to kind of reconsider and look at right now and say, okay, like right now we're in a mess, right? And so how do we deal with the mess that we're in, but at the same time not just trying to patch and fix the problem now, but for the future, how do we better prepare ourselves? Cory, what ideas and suggestions do you have for that?
Sure. It's fun because where this puts us in a very neat conversation is that the faith informs us in this very work. Our faith informs us through one really main way that sometimes we try in our own hearts and our own humanity kind of push aside, but it really has a lot to do with discipline and intentionality, and those things that are really benefited from our prayer life. And so if you understand what it takes to be able to have a good prayer life, right? You have to discipline yourself. You have to be able to say, you know what, though I might not seem like I need this now, I need it. And doesn't that translate to money, right? The idea that like during those times, I might not need it now, but I need to make a decision around simplicity now. I need to make this decision around prayer. The other thing is the idea of intentionality. This idea that your money, if you don't manage it, it's going to manage you. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way without prayer. If you don't pray, life's going to manage you, right? And that's that concept helped drives home this idea that the fruit of prayer is not just these great spiritual fruits, but it's the very physical nature of, we need to talk about this, honey, to your spouse, right? We need to be able to talk about where's this money going, how we're spending, what is our call to simplicity. And so those conversations can be hard to have, but as we know that if we could have those intentional conversations and that discipline around that, whatever your role is in your family, that you could really lead your family to a lot of freedom when you're able to kind of have some intentional conversations around it, because most of the pain that comes from this is when we don't talk about it.
Right.
And
So
we don't have
That's right.
talking about this then, what about tithing with this? Okay. Now I know we've spoken a lot about like generosity, giving money to the church, giving money to charities that you believe in. I mean, you said something to me. Now tell me the stat again, Cory. You said that like in response to the 2018 scandal across the nation as a whole, the number of donors went down, but the total number of donations didn't. Is that correct? Because some people stepped up to the plate, so to speak. So the church is kind of on a little bit of a perilous ground, so to speak, going into this, and now we're in COVID-19, and some parishes are doing better because they've adopted online giving. Some have been reluctant to that. But us with people, as we get this money and we're called to tithe, I mean, I'll be honest, like I've said this to you guys off air, but I mean, listen, part of me, I'm still a little angry with the church. I'm not going to lie. And I'm still not sure like where all my money is going to be used for. So I feel more comfortable taking that money that I have and using it to give it to people that I know need it directly, or to ministries that I know have honestly sometimes greater transparency with what they do with their funds, that I know is going to be used more effectively. I hate to say it that way. Now, I don't want to speak globally across the whole church, but just my own experience here. These are some of the decisions and the conversations that Chris and I have had to make about how to give our money appropriately. And even this, how to use this money that's been given to us by the government to be able to still honor that spirit of generosity. Cory.
I'll say as a quick response to that, and
Please.
it's this, that we have embedded in us the way that the Lord created us, a spiritual need to give. And so I think honoring that and honoring what Jason had kind of teed up earlier, which is this idea that if we understand the spiritual need to give, that there's something inside of us that has to be generous to give away. It's one of the values that gets us closest to God when we're generous, because it's most like God, who is all generous, right? And so when we're able to be in that spot of generosity, I think the question you're going to, Mario, is kind of the next level, is how do we look at where that goes? So I think the first one is understanding it's not ours. We have to be generous. And then where you go with that, I think is I love the church to be at that spot where we're at that next level of saying, hey, let's be transparent, let's be open. But there's a lot of the true giving is from the heart. And so you getting money, say from the government, and feeling like you have to give it to the church is a great spot, because, I mean, where you worship needs to turn on power, electricity, and all that. But those are needs. That's not your own personal need to be able to release it. And I think that's here the balance is, there is a certain piece that kind of scratches our back as a donor, that when we give it out, that they thank us properly, that our church doesn't always necessarily do properly. But there's also this transparency and openness to say, look at the impact that this gift is making. And that's the fun part of this conversation, is that that's a human behavior that we can improve. But we really need to be able to address that in prayer, that we release it, and that in action that we give it. And those two things then kind of lead to us understanding where that goes and how it's spent and those. And there's I think that's the proliferation of a lot of ministries in our country, including Will Woods, of people that have handled religious gifts as the beneficiary really well. I think they've been modeling to the church how to best use that money and use the money to make impact to save souls.
Amen. Jason, what do you think, man?
Well, I was trying to mute my mic while the phone was just going off the hook at the house just now.
We didn't hear.
I didn't hear anything, and my kids are doing great.
Uh,
Last week, my kids were yelling the whole time, so we're doing solid this week.
I had someone just ringing for the past 2 minutes, so I apologize for that. No, the thing that comes to mind with, I remember just in my own personal walk when I just, the Lord knocked me off my horse, my faith with Elise and her faith and witness to me, and I just felt, man, just so hard in love with the Lord, and I looked at like all the rules as not like a bunch of oppressive things. There's that phone going again, as these oppressive rules, but there's something that was true freedom in all of that, and not something that was trying to take away my freedom, but help me to live a free life, of a life that's called to love. And then I was challenged. I was reading the book Christian Fatherhood by, I believe it was Steve Wood, and he has a chapter in there talking about, and it really challenged me using Old Testament scripture passages, talking about the Lord's call for us to give. And it was just so convincing to me that I'm like, you know what? Right now, I'm ready to, at this point in my life, I was quitting my job. I was moving to D.C. with my wife that we were just married, and we were gonna live in an apartment in Washington D.C. on a teacher's salary, going to grad school, and I felt more called to give than ever before, and we were like, where I had people telling me, like smart, wise people telling me, Jason, you probably don't worry about giving. And I was like, no, I feel like the Lord's calling me to give, and I'm telling you, the more I gave, the more what God was like blessing me. Like I couldn't outgive him, and I was trying, like, well, no, I just got this gift out of nowhere. I'm like, well, I'm going to give this gift away, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere I'm going to get like another gift. I'm like, God, I'm trying to give this to you, and you're giving it back. Like, but what he was really giving me was free. I wasn't afraid. Like that scripture passage in Matthew where, the birds of the air and how much he provides and how much more for you little faith. And I was really challenged. So I think that there's the part of freedom that I found in tithing. And I know, Mario, what you're talking about, the struggle with trust. And what's beautiful about our church and giving to different organizations is that you can give to the parish in a specific way that that money is going to go specific thing. It can't be used for other things or anything like that. You can earmark it, and their financing department, their CFO, they can't put it somewhere else. They have to put it exactly where you gave it. So there's those types of things too, but there's also just trust and freedom to rebuild. Part of rebuilding a relationship, right, is that vulnerability, and say, I love, and I need to not try to build walls. I need to go and above and beyond and try to break down these barriers and these wounds that I have in my heart, and trust my parish and get to know more. And that calls me to be more invested in my parish, to be like, so what's going on? How are things going? Are we doing this for that? It's a beautiful relationship where it's not just me, trying to throw money out into the basket, but it's me also beginning that relationship to be aware of what's going on in my church. And so anyway, I just really want to encourage people that I know right now is a tough time, but to find whatever, like as Cory was talking about this online giving, there's only just a few parishes that I know of that aren't doing online giving. And if you can get online, you can find out your church information, parish ways to give. If it's just $5 a week, but just start a commitment to giving of your resources, your talents, and your treasures to the church in a powerful way, and see what happens.
I think it's great, man. No, great encouragement in terms of like how to reassess and think about this. Now, with the time that we have about 8 minutes or so with this conversation. So far, we've been talking about us and individuals who have the luxury of being able to have this conversation about what to do with the stimulus money. But there's a whole host of Americans right now who have lost their jobs. And I think what the latest numbers, I think, Cory, you said this to me right before we went on, 26.5 million Americans in the last 5 weeks have applied for unemployment. I mean, that's a staggering amount of individuals. When we talk about 370 million Americans, I mean, where that's like 7% of the country. I mean, like that's, outrageous. And so even in our own archdiocese, we're seeing that. I think this is public, right? That a large number of individuals have been furloughed who work for the archdiocese. So these are things that are happening close to home, not just stuff nationally, but happening here in our communities. How, as a church, Cory, a question to you, how as a church should we respond to massive unemployment? What is the just thing to do? What's the merciful thing to do? What are things that we can do to be responding to this great calamity that's happening before us economically? Big question.
Yeah, and Mario, I share an analogy that I used when you start looking at these numbers, when it started creeping past 15, 20 million. It's imagining as if you and your family pulled up to the Grand Canyon and you saw this great, beautiful sight, and you saw the depths and how vast and expansive it is. You say, hey, how do we backfill this thing? And the reality is it's
easy.
Yeah,
Just don't do it.
But that's how I think massive this is that's going on. So what happens is that can lead us to inactivity or apathy. And those two things are just as dangerous, because saying that it's out of our hands is also not. But I do think that one at a time that we're able to, as Christians, to be able to reach out to the individuals that we know. I think the other thing too is, there's some basic, we forget about this because we were in the land of plenty, but there is the basic stuff of how do we address healthcare? How do we address, these things that the bishops were wrestling with over the past year got more political than it should be. Our faith should dictate so much of this to be able to say, look, free healthcare, whatever, that's a whole nother conversation. But the point is, access to good healthcare is an important thing. And so some of this is realizing that we have to care for at least the least common denominator to make sure that they're healthy and taken care of. And that means access. We just had a donor to give to Catholic counseling, right? The whole idea of being able to be mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, like these things that we know that we can address. But the overall idea of like bailing out financially all these unemployed folks is overwhelming. But if we take it one at a time and make sure that we kind of stand up for some of the overarching pieces, but then also reach out to them. This is what I think is the beauty of our church, is we're in parish communities. So what I've been encouraging pastors to do is to share this message. If you need help, reach out to us. If you can help, reach out to us. So that we as a church can connect resources to people, because people are in so many different spots. So if you have gifts, share them. If you need gifts, please come to us. The church is here for you. And I think that connection, using the parish as that connection, can be a real service to people, especially if they're unemployed.
Amen. Jason.
That's great. One of the things that I was just having a discussion with Ann Kashut and Kimberly Hinkle about struggles with infertility. We just did a little Facebook Live just earlier today, and just there's people have a hard time reaching out and asking for help, and we were never meant to be on islands. We were never meant to be people who trying to do this on our own without anybody's help. I mean, no one has a self-made man. We need, and we stand on the shoulders of many who have been there for us and who have helped us over the years. So whether, like you're saying, the invitation is that whether you are in need, and that was something that when Elise was diagnosed with cancer back in 2014, so we've been fighting this for 6 years. One of the first things a friend of mine, Deacon Mark Kudrain, said to me was, Jason, let people help you. And that's a humbling experience, a humbling thing to do. It's to sit there and say, I do need help. I can't make tuition this year. I can't put food on the table like I want, and I need people to help me with that. And people came and helped us. And I'm waiting for the day. I'm praying that I can one day be so blessed that I can just shower, but I can't. I'm not there yet. I didn't win the lottery, but I can do one thing at a time, right? And that's the other thing is that, so I would just encourage people who, if you are struggling, whatever it is, if it's emotionally, if it's financially, if it's spiritually, if it's in relationship, there are people out there that want to help, that are ready to help, that are there for you. And if you are somebody who have been blessed with resources and talents and gifts, wow, do we need you? We need you now. And I love like what the Catholic Foundation is doing, is being able to provide. That's why y'all change your name to the community, is being able to provide a place where people can go to and pool resources and then reach out to those who are asking for help.
Yeah. And I think, so one is, if we are in need of help, knowing how to ask for help. But at the same time is also, if we are, as we've said, somebody who has some extra or some finance, a little bit of a cushion to be able to have the uncomfortable conversation or initiate that uncomfortable conversation with somebody. If you know somebody who has lost their job recently or been furloughed, and they're a friend, give them a call, and be very gentle with them, catch up, see how they're doing, have a good conversation with them, but then also broach it to say, hey man, like I've been willing to pray for you, but is there any other way that I can help? Can I help you financially? And you give them freedom to be able to respond to that or not. I think that broaching and initiating that conversation, I think, is important, because sometimes a lot of people feel very embarrassed and don't feel comfortable asking for help. But if we're willing to take the risk to initiate that offer to them, I think it can make it easier for them. Now, again, they can accept or reject it. We're not going to force it on them, but I think we should be mindful to be able to have those conversations with those individuals. So we're coming to the end of our time. Cory, I'll give you the last word, man. Anything else you'd like to offer here to the people?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Mario. It's an honor to be with both you, both titans of wisdom and kindness and thoughts on marriage and life and family. But I will say, for us, that the church hopefully can really be a resource to many of you, that your parish can be a resource to you. And the topic of this, with this kind of, what do I do with the stimulus check? Pray, and then act. That's what our faith tells us to do, and that action is intentional. And for us, this is a great time. We don't need, kind of joking around, but we don't need the lottery to be generous. We don't need the lottery to care for our brothers and sisters. And so we really encourage that generosity, encourage the intentionality, encourage the strength of the family during this time, now more than ever. And so honored to be a part of the call. Thanks, guys, and look forward to kind of keeping this conversation going.
Absolutely.
All
right. Cory, God bless you. Jason, God bless you guys. Honored doing this again, and we'll be back next week doing this some more. So God bless everybody. Take care and continue to wash your hands and be safe.